Alrighty. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our webinar dealing with data leaks. My name is Amanda, and Larry Grugin will be your presenter today. I know this is a topic that we've been hearing a lot of questions about, so don't worry that if you don't catch everything. We're recording this webinar, and we'll be emailing you the video and the slides after the webinar concludes. Our next webinar is on August 16th at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time, and we'll be covering corporate wellness programs. We have a lot of participants registered today, so I'll be keeping the conference on mute. Larry will pause for questions periodically, and I'll unmute so you can ask them. Or if you prefer, you can type them in the question box below, and I'll ask the questions for you. Other than that, please enjoy.
Thank you, Amanda. This seminar is slightly different than what I've done in the past because this is more of an introductory seminar. And the reason I'm doing this is because over the past couple of years, a couple of my clients have been hacked and they've had breaches. And it was interesting going through that situation and learning what happens when an employer, their records get breached. What are the consequences in that? And it's embarrassing and it is scary because, in fact, in some situations, sometimes the information can be held hostage. Now, the purpose behind this seminar is give you some ideas about how to deal with this, some resources to deal with this. But what's scary is, and all the experts are saying, it's not if you're going to be hacked, it's when. And depending on the industry and the information that you have, it's just a matter of time, and you have to prepare yourself. Now, one thing I found very interesting is the fact that you have to look at your liability insurance for your business to see if this type of breach is covered by your liability insurance. In some situations, it's not. So that's one thing you have to look at. Now, this area has gotten a lot of press over the last couple of weeks, last couple of years. Just last week, the DNC got hacked and the information released by the Russians. But over the last couple of years, there's been a number of different data breaches. In November of 2014, as this slide indicates, there were North Korean hackers. The data they included was personal information about so many pictures, employees, and families. Emails between employees. It got very embarrassing because some pictures of stars were released. Other internal discussions between executives about actors were released. And here the hackers called themselves Guardians of Peace and demanded the cancellation of a planned release of a film. And of course, the film didn't go anyplace, but it was something that made the news. Also, Anthem got hacked, suspected Chinese hackers. They hacked the nation's second largest health insurer, names, addresses, and social security numbers and birth dates, and other information of 80 million customers and employees were hacked. And then, as a result of that, thieves used information to rack up $40,000 in credit card charges on some of their customers. In April of 2015, OPN announced they had been the target of breach targeting records, and first of all, they said it was only 4 million, and later James Comey said it was 18 million. And this was the largest breach ever for governmental information in U.S. history. Another situation, Office of Personnel Management information in that situation targeted Social Security numbers, names, dates, and place of births and addresses. Likely involved a theft of detailed security clearance information. They even stole 5 million fingerprints. And it was estimated in this situation that 21.5 million records were stolen. And a result of that, the director of the Office of Personnel Management resigned because of that. One of the most high-profile hacks was Target. And again, this was Russian hackers. 70 million customers and information was hacked. The information that was hacked was name, addresses, phone numbers, and email addresses. Now, as a result of this hack, what Target did, they offered 1 year free credit monitoring and identity theft information for all customers that shopped in U.S. stores. And the way they got in, which is real interesting, the way they got in was through a third-party vendor. And this is a vendor that supplied heating and cooling information or devices for Target. So that's how they got in through that access. And again, what this shows and what this particular hack showed is the fact the importance of actually looking at all your third parties that you deal with and seeing if they are protected in this situation. Now, what we're going to do today is a general overview, as we did, of the situation right now, and this has become more and more frequent. Almost week by week, hackers are going in. And how do you approach advising your employer in cybersecurity? What does the threat landscape look like? And more important is what resources are out there to help you, and what are the things you should be advising your employer in regard to this? Now, what is considered being hacked? Anywhere where there is a device consisting of hardware, software, typically, and with an internet connection. So what can be hacked? So basically, any device that's hooked up to the internet can be hacked. So you have to look and see what information do you store on your computers, what information is going to be valuable to these hackers, and the best way to actually protect it. Now, let's look at some important terms in this situation. Cybersecurity is the protection of information systems from theft and danger to hardware, software, and information on them, as well as from disruption and misdirection of services. Data breach is intentional or unintentional release of secure information to an untrusted environment. A cloud is the practice of using a network of remote servers hosted on the internet to store, manage, and process data. Now that's, I use a cloud in that situation. I think everybody is taking stuff offline onto a cloud, and the questions have to ask how secure is that information on your cloud. And then a term phishing is the attempt to acquire sensitive information such as usernames, passwords, credit card details, sometimes indirectly money, and often for the malicious reasons by masquerading as trustworthy entity in an electronic communication. I know all the time I get emails from people I don't know asking for information. This is a more overt intrusion in your computer systems. Encryption, the process of encoding messages or information in such a way that only authorized parties can use it. Botnet is known as a zombie army, a number of internet computers that, although their owners are unaware of it, have been set up to forward transmissions, including spam or viruses to other computers. Patch, a piece of software designed to update a computer system or supporting data to fix or includes it. This includes fixing security vulnerabilities. Two-factor authorization, more and more people are requiring this right now, a security process in which the user provides two means of identification for separate categories of credentials, one typically a physical token, such as a card, and the other is a security code. Now, additional resources, and this is important in dealing with this. These are resources you can look at in order to help you deal in the current information regarding how to deal with security breaches. First of all, the Federal Trade Commission start with security guidance to businesses. This is a generic guide drawn from the FTC's recent informant cases, and it's fairly simple and written in non-technical language. I've read it. It's good in trying to understand how to approach this. It provides insight to what group of federal regulators are thinking about and the standard of care in business. So I think this is a baseline. The NITSD Cyber Security Framework. This document was developed through a lengthy consultation process with the industry and meant to provide a general approach to cyber security and to the point that businesses towards relevant existing standards. And then recommendations. These documents are more detailed and technical recommendations, and this is something you may want to give to your IT people in checking to see how your systems are organized. Now, for those of you who don't know, the NIST is the National Institute of Standards and Technology. This is the federal agency that works with industry with security. Additional resources: the Verizon Data Breach Report is an annual analysis of cyber threats as reflected in the actual data breaches and security incidents. And this report looks at data submitted by a broad range of law enforcement agencies, private companies, and cybersecurity providers. Steptoe and Johnson podcast with this weekly podcast put out by a group of attorneys. Through Steptoe, they provide a good summary of the case file, policy developments, and legislation related to cyber data breach, privacy, and national security. When you get breached, there's all kinds of legal issues in regard to what information was disclosed. So this is something, again, there has to be a team of people that actually advise you on this. And then DH information, this is the Department of Homeland Security, supports a number of information sharing initiatives, and you find a summary information right there. So this is a number, I think, just to check and see how your system stacks up against others. Now, as I indicated in the beginning, 100% prevention is not possible. And as this slide indicates, is the fact that there are three kinds of entities: those that have been hacked, those that will be hacked, or those that have been hacked but really just don't know it yet. So I think all the experts are indicating to us that it's just a matter of time before businesses, their information is going to be stolen. And try to do the best you can to protect your information. So there's a standard of care that the various agencies, the NIST, the Department of Justice, and Homeland Security are developing standards that businesses can use in order to stay ahead of the curve. So you can get help out there to develop your systems to make sure you're protected. Also, there's various governmental programs. There's the FBI InfraGuard, which can help businesses deal with this. The U.S. Secret Service Electronic Crimes Data Task Force that actually helps businesses deal with this. And there's also entities organized by state and local authorities that can help businesses get ready for this. And there's other government agencies, SEC, Department of Justice, Federal Trade Commission, Homeland Security, all can help you as a business deal with cybersecurity. Now, there's also been federal legislation. As this slide indicates, the U.S. Congress passed the Cybersecurity Act of 2015. It was signed by President Obama on December 18, 2015. And what this does, it aims to defend against cyber attacks by creating a framework of voluntary sharing cyber threat information between private entities and the federal government, as well as within agencies. And legislation also aims to protect individual rights, ensuring that personal information is not necessarily divulged. And companies are permitted to monitor and operate defensive measures on both their information systems as well as those within written authorization. And then entities are encouraged to implement and utilize security controls to protect against unauthorized access or acquisition of cyber threat indicators. And companies may share threat indicators and defense measures with the federal government, but they must institute appropriate security controls and remove personal information. So again, what this bill does is the federal government wants to work with private industry to understand what the threats are so they can deal with it. And liability protections are available for companies choosing to share information provided they implement certain controls. And private entities may also share threat indicators and defensive measures with other private entities. And personal information has to be protected and has to be removed. Now, there's also, on the 49 states, there's different definitions of breach, different requirements, notification of governmental officials and law enforcement, different requirements and notification of customers. You have to look at your state law to see in that situation what your notification requirements are to your customers. And then different requirements as to what data elements must be disclosed in notifications. So again, you have to check state law to see exactly what your obligations are. And again, reporting the status of regulatory, there's various different federal agencies that are reporting on this. There's the SEC, FTC, FCC, and sector agencies that are actually report on the status of these various efforts. If there's a cyber breach. Now, information sharing among shareholders, governmental agents report on the general status. Governmental contractors and subcontractors have different obligations than other entities. So depending if you have governmental contracts, they may require you, if there's a data breach, to actually report to the government. And again, third-party vulnerability, I just want to just make sure you understand that the target breach was through one of their vendors, and this is the vendor that was supplying their air conditioning and heating. They went through there. So again, in regard to this, you have to check all your vendors that you work with and any entity that has access to your systems to see how protected they are. You have to audit that just to make sure that everyone is protected. Now, generally, who are the hackers? Well, again, there's various nation-states, North Korea, China, Russia, and it could be others. There's also criminal groups that are gaining information, social security numbers, and also credit card information. Patriotic hackers that are, again, displaying information because for certain causes. Terrorists and ISIL is actually doing it, and there's been some situations where the hackers are actually teenagers that, for the thrill of it, are hacking into systems. So all these groups are actually hacking into governmental servers. Now, what are the motivations? Generally, it's money, but a few years ago, the website Ashley Madison was hacked. That's the site where they promote having affairs, and it was morality. That was the driver in this one. But basically, what's common in this is, one, they're trying to get credit card information, social security numbers, but two, and real important, in some situations, there could be ransom. where they're going to hold your information hostage until you pay them a sum of money. So they will freeze your information systems. You can't use your computers until you pay a sum of money in order to unfreeze your information. And you can't get your information back. So these are some of the drivers in that regard. Now I've been talking for a lot of minutes here. Does anybody have any questions? Amanda, did you get any questions?
We haven't gotten any. Oh, sorry. We haven't gotten any yet, but I will unmute.
The conference has been unmuted.
Does anybody have any questions? Anybody? Okay, well, why don't we continue?
Alrighty.
The conference has been muted.
There's been a wave of data breach litigation. In the Seventh Circuit, which is Wisconsin, Illinois, Indiana, there was a case involving Neiman Marcus, and basically credit card information from Neiman Marcus was hacked, and what they're alleging, these are credit card holders, that Neiman Marcus didn't do enough to protect their credit card information, so they're being sued because that information was being used in order to use that information to buy things. So again, that's one possibility, and if you get hacked, that your customers or your vendors could sue you because they're going to be alleging that you didn't do enough to protect their information. There's also class action suits against Target, Anthem, Sony, and many other vendors. So again, in that situation, litigation is not beyond the realm of possibility. Now, high-level, publicly available discussion of prior work with the Department of Defense and intelligence community. There's various products that you can use through Bose Allen, Hamilton, and Verizon. There's cyber products and services available. There could be threat analysis, cyber services, post-cyber incident threat mitigation, workforce skills assessment and cyber training, and also products that actually analyze possible risk, threats, and opportunities. So these products are out there. Products and services available through Verizon Managed Security Services, Forensic Response, Rapid Response Retainers, and governmental partnerships, all available through Verizon. Now, must have carefully constructed response before any crisis hits. Critical for post-breach litigation, make sure your attorneys are ready in this situation. Make sure you're ready for any governmental inquiries and investigations. Response to any media inquiries, especially if your information gets hacked and your business goes down. What you need to do before this happens, you need to identify and protect crucial or critical assets. Get experienced external counsel and forensic experts retained in advance. Please check to see if there's any conflicts in regard to some of your vendors. Expert advice to help develop the plan in order to deal with this. Expert advice on how to deal and how to detect the breach as soon as possible. And again, after hours and weekend responses, if something happens, who's going to check your system during those times? So these are things you have to look over and prepare for in case your system get hacked, either at night or over the weekend. You should contact law enforcement, FBI, United States Secret Service, and if there is a hack, what is going to be your immediate response plan? Will there be a single point of contact in this situation if something happens? but also recognize if your information does get hacked, you have to recognize investigation and recovery time takes time. So again, you have to plan for this. Also, if you get hacked, disseminate information to the board of directors or your management team. And again, boards are beginning to realize they're going to be held accountable for this. Boards need to understand there's no longer just a low-level IT issue, and boards need to understand the extent and importance of efforts to prevent, monitor, and detect and mitigate the situation. And also, if you get hacked, how are you going to disseminate information to investors? Critical that Investor Relations Department understands, prepared to any inquiries if you get hacked. And how are you going to communicate to your customers? Depending on where you're operating, there could be 49 different state rules in how to notify your customers. And if you are operating internationally, there could be, again, different national rules on data breaches. So again, this can get rather complicated. So what are some suggested best practices? Well, again, pull your IT people in and practice. What happens if you get a data breach? Good practice for the real thing. Also can ensure awareness, taking responsibility in advance. Also engage white hat hackers to see if they can get into your system. And that's a part of the war games and practice, is see how vulnerable your system is. And check your liability coverage. As I said before, your liability coverage for your business may not include these breaches. And what you may have to do, a separate insurance policy to cover these type of issues and problems. So these are things that you have to look at in order to be prepared if your system is going to be hacked. Are there any questions? Anybody have any questions?
I'll unmute.
The conference has been unmuted.
Anybody have any questions?
I guess quick question. This could be HIPAA information and beyond. This is just not HIPAA. It could be beyond just HIPAA.
Yeah, the HIPAA information is just the tip of the iceberg, depending what's in your system. And that's why I raised it, because more and more companies are being hacked for various reasons. And because of the fact that your HIPAA information includes, for example, Social Security numbers. Social Security numbers are extremely important, but they're also can be used as a set of credit cards and all this other stuff. Credit card information is probably the most vulnerable. But again, what's important is making sure and you understand what information is in your system. And any personal information, and again, anytime you send any emails that include any personal information, not just HIPAA information, but also Social Security numbers, those emails must be encrypted, because there are people out there that are actually interrupting emails. So please, I mean, there's various ways that hackers can gain access to your system. But I think you'd have to talk to your IT people how your system can be tested to make sure it's not vulnerable. Any other questions? Anyone else? And as I said before, this is just the introduction to this, because there's been a few occasions that my clients have been hacked, and they bring me in to look at this, look at the information. And so this is something that's become more and more prevalent as the weeks and months go on. And again, just be prepared, and that's why I decided to do this as an introduction to make sure you understand the threat on this. All right? Any other questions? Well, Amanda, like I said, this would be a short presentation, and thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, everyone, so much for coming. Like I said, we'll be emailing you the slides and a recording afterward, and we look forward to seeing you at the next webinar.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.